Should be just about done. PowerPoint. So, okay. I want to introduce next Jeremy Raymer he's the CEO of Driver Reach. He's going to give you guys some practical advice on how to hire drivers, which I can only imagine all of you could use. So welcome, Jeremy.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. And Tim, thank you for the kind words. There are a few, as Tim shared, that I've gotten to know over the years as well. And I feel like, the industry is huge as it is. It's still pretty close, and people end up doing business with people they like and trust. And it's important to find those people and work with those people. And that's certainly what I like to do when I partner with other, vendor partners. And Tim and Mike are both certainly one of those. And somebody said to me earlier this year, they made a comment that, like, you're part of this, like, what did they call it? The Justice League. And I thought that was a really nice compliment, because they were saying, like, you're like the good guys, some of the good guys in the industry. And I went to our marketing folks. I'm like, hey, can we say that? Can we use that? And they're like, no, you cannot. You can't say that. That's trademarked. So, yep. Thank you. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about today. ATRI puts out a study every year, top 10 industry issues, and they survey tons of drivers and carriers. And every year for a long time, 5-6 years in a row, the driver shortage was the number one issue. Now this year it dropped to number 2. Obviously, there's some concerns economically, fuel prices and so on, and that's what took number 1. But nothing's changed. And I don't expect you to read all this, but I will tell you a funny story. So I used to own a truckload carrier, small fleet, and we had about 21 trucks, I think, at our peak. And I also owned a truck driver staffing company, and we're based out of Indianapolis, or I was based out of Indianapolis. We had about 500 full-time and part-time CDL drivers that I leased. I was the employer, and I leased them to other companies all throughout the Midwest. And I sold that company because I was building Driver Reach, and I knew that while I had a lot of success leasing drivers and growing that business and doing that successfully and building technology to help me operate more efficiently, I realized that what I had been building for myself could be way more beneficial to the industry if I built a separate company and marketed that. And that's where Driver Reach began. But I was in New York talking to the private equity group that bought my company, had a meeting at Rockefeller Plaza right around this time. It was actually a little bit closer to Thanksgiving. And we went out, went out downtown, Manhattan. We went to Grand Central Station and drank a lot of alcohol. We were staying at the Waldorf Astoria, which is a really nice historic hotel, and it was packed and too much alcohol. And it was getting late, and everybody's going upstairs, the few that I was with. And I saw there was a spot at the bar, so I pulled up to the bar and I said, I just had a beer, because I needed one more drink, right? And so I ordered a beer, and then it was packed, and there was this gentleman on my left and this woman on my right. And the woman said, being polite, Midwest type person as she seemed like, and she said, "What brings you to town?" And I said, "Just business. I had a meeting today and leaving in the morning." And what do you say next, right? "How about you?" And she said, "Same, business." And I said, "What do you do?" And she said, "I'm an escort." And I said, "I'm an S-corp." And I swear that is a true story. And I realized, alcohol sedates the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain it's a little bit slow on the uptake. And I realized afterwards what she said. And when she realized I wasn't going to be a customer, she, left. But the guy that was next to me, he said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhearing your conversation." He goes, "You don't get out much, do you?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't run into things like this at the Courtyard Marriott in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I tend to frequent more." And I know I've used up a lot of valuable time with that story, but it is true. And I figured with this audience that might resonate a little bit more than others. What I want to talk about today is these, from a modern, recruiting and a driver shortage standpoint, there are really 3 areas that I want to focus on today. Certainly what's most furthest upstream, recruiting, marketing, how you advertise, how you promote yourself, what you say and how you say it, right? And then the applicant experience. And then lastly, how technology helps to bring that all together. So let's start most furthest upstream. It is really important to know what it is about you as a carrier, as a fleet, as a company that resonates with your employees or your contractors. What is it that makes you special? And be specific, right? Is it more home time? Is it new trucks? Is it the way you treat people? Whatever it is, make sure that that is something that you really identify and hone that messaging around that, because that is what is going to help you stand out and attract the people who that matters to. And then obviously, and I'm going to speed through some of these slides just for time's sake, but obviously once you've kind of got that whittled down to something that resonates, then you've got to make sure that you're communicating that, right? That you're sharing that it's out there. And we'll get into that, what that necessarily means. How many in here do not have a website? That is great. Thank you for not raising your hands. That is something that is not uncommon with smaller fleets, and it's painful because it doesn't cost a lot to have one or have some form of web presence, and it's really important that you do, and that you share that, and that you or you keep that current, that you update that you make sure that you certainly mobile optimized website, as well as recognizing that drivers are finding you way before they're ever applying for a job. They're looking you up. They're going to find you, who you are, what you're about. They're going to learn that through a lot of different, whether it's Glassdoor, Indeed reviews, et cetera. And so it's important that not only that you are what you say you are, but they be able, you want them to find you, you want them to reach out to you. But when they do, it can't be a site that looks like it hasn't been updated for 15 years, or the last post or the last blog post because somebody said we're going to start doing this because we know this will help, and then they abandon it after a few months. You can't do that. You got to be consistent, and you got to be visible. Now, let's just assume you're doing all of that correctly, right? You've honed your message, you're promoting that from the mountaintops. You don't even necessarily have to pay for it, but it does take time because you're going to be updating your website. You're going to be communicating via social media channels and doing that consistently. But even if you're doing all of that right, what comes next is really important, and that's the applicant experience. The reality is, better recruiting begins with a better applicant experience. Now, here's another question, show of hands. How many use this like all the time, all day long? I'm not going to ask how many of you actually take it with you into the restroom, but the reality is we use it all the time. And so do drivers, right? So it's really important that however they are trying to apply, that they be able to do it from a mobile device. Really important. So much so that if they attempt to go to your website, click the apply now button. I know this is probably, obvious, but if you go to your website, which is probably where you're driving any traffic to go to apply for a job, that apply now button needs to be front and center, right? It needs to be very easy. That is like the most important thing that you want them to be able to see. But when they click on that button, what's their experience like? Does it say, does up pop a PDF that they have to download now? Because they're not going to do that. They can't do that, certainly not simply, and they're just going to abandon the process. So that is not a good applicant experience. But more importantly, if they click on that apply now button, this is a highly regulated industry, right? We require a lot of information to be able to hire a driver. It's the same for anybody who hires CDL drivers. It's complex. So we certainly need to collect a lot of information, and that's painful as it is. the last thing we want to do is make it more painful by not making it mobile optimized and making it as easy as possible. Now, we pay a lot of money, a lot of us, in marketing and advertising for drivers. We pay a lot of money to get them to us. The last thing we want to do is cause a bad experience that leads to abandonment. More importantly, and it's hard enough to get them on the phone. It's hard enough to engage with them. It's hard enough to hire them. The reality is each of those leads that we get are valuable assets. There's two things we know about them. One, they have a CDL. So that's prerequisite number one. Two, they're interested in working for you, at least enough to go through whatever the process that you made them go through to get their information into your funnel to begin with. Now, the applicant experience doesn't end with that completion of the DOT application or short form that ultimately will have to lead to a DOT application. It's really important that once you actually engage with them, because while I would say I'm not a technologist, I certainly provide a technology solution to help this process. It's not eliminating humans, right? Humans are hiring humans here. And so it's really important that even if you have all the best marketing in the world and you have all the best technology in the world, if you fumble here, you still lose. It's really important that the conversations that recruiters are having are impactful and are engaging and are helping to guide towards a decision. Whether the decision is to join your company or not, if there's a fit, it's still guiding them towards a decision. So you, just like in sales, right? You have so much time and you're trying to find customers that are a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, I'd just rather know so I could move on with the limited resource of time I have to find those who are a good fit. But it's really important to engage, to build rapport with that driver and let them know that they matter, right? Show empathy. What an opportunity we've had over the course of the last couple of years, especially with COVID, to not only just to be more human. I think we've all slowed down a bit in the last couple of years, and that's a good thing. And there's an opportunity to have just better conversations and sort of lead those conversations. I threw this slide up here because a few years ago, there was a speaker named Phil M. Jones, actually had a accent similar to Tim's. And he spoke at a couple of recruiting and retention conferences. And we started to meet each other because we kept seeing each other at all these things. And he said to me, "You seem like you're pretty well connected." This is my best attempt at his voice. But he goes, what do you think if we did this? He has this book called Exactly What to Say. It's about sales. It's about certain way that you phrase things to really help people make decisions. What do you think about this for CDL drivers? And I thought, oh, this is going to cost a fortune. What is he, And after we talked a little bit, I said, I think that's great because there's nothing like this that exists. Now, to be, honest, I intended to bring, 15, 20 of these books with me just to give out to anybody who wanted any. And as I do regularly as I get older, I forgot. And so I drove up from Indianapolis. So here's what I'll say just at the end. There's my contact information, email address. If you shoot me an email with your address, I'm happy to mail a complimentary book to you. But the reason why I say this is because it's really helpful for recruiters to have the right types of conversations that they need to have in order to improve your chances of being successful in this challenging time. Now, there are a couple of things that I think are that we'll talk about that are really important when it comes to that applicant experience. And there's a couple of frustrations that I hear from recruiters constantly. And I'm sure some of you or folks from your companies can relate to this. Couple things. One, when a driver calls in and you've got this great, conversation going and it sounds like this driver's a great fit, right? And then you say, well, that sounds great, Bob, or whatever the driver's name is. Just go to the website, fill out an application, and then I will follow up with you as soon as I get it. This happens all the time. Problem is, I hang up. Never get an application from Bob. You did not make it easy for Bob. Instead, you sent him on an errand. It's a necessary errand, right? It's got to happen. But how much easier would it be if you said, that sounds great, Bob. First thing I need to do is get you to complete an application. I can email it to you or text it to you. Do you have a preference? Or if you've got 10 minutes, how about if I ask you some of the questions here, I'll get it started for you, and then I can email or text it to you so you can sign off on it, make sure it's accurate. The point is, you got to make it easy. We have to make it easy for drivers, for applicants. Now, another thing I'll say, and that's what this slide is more about, is first of all, when you do get a lead that comes in, that was a phone call, the first example. The second here is if you get an application, right, or a lead that comes in, so you've got enough information to reach out, you got to do it right away because time is of the essence. And then when that happens, you got to call the driver immediately. But what happens like 95% of the time when you make a phone call? Straight to voicemail, right? So, and you should leave a voicemail, right? You should say, thank you so much for calling ABC Trucking. I got your application. I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. But then you should follow up immediately with a text, and not your personal phone, but through a system like Driver Reach. But follow up with a text and say, hey, Bob, just left you a voicemail. Thank you for your interest. What time this afternoon works for you? Because here's what happens in the absence of doing that. You'll call that driver, leave a voicemail. Probably won't get a call back. You'll call them the next day, leave a voicemail. Probably won't get a call back. After 2 or 3 days of doing that, you're going to write that driver off and say he's not interested. But it's not necessarily that. You just didn't make it easy. Make it easy. Remove resistance, remove friction. Send the driver a text. The driver will respond within seconds sometimes or minutes and say, how about 2 p.m. this afternoon? And then lo and behold, you're connecting with that driver and, hopefully, moving through a process. Now, earlier, we were talking about advertising and stuff like that. And one of the advantages of technology, Tim, on one of his slides, talked about how you need technology to do some of these things. A lot of times the questions I get are, what's working today from a advertising or marketing standpoint? Where should we be spending our money? What's better? What's the best? And there's a lot of answers to that. But first of all, you could try it all, right? And try it all and see what works. But you need technology to be able to provide you insight into what's working and what's not. And then you make decisions accordingly. And so that's where that's one of the reasons why simple recruiting technology is really helpful. But I'm going to start with two primary facets of technology: CRM and then applicant tracking system. Driver Reach, it combines both, and the reason is CRM. Traditionally, how many of you use a CRM for your own company? Okay. So CRM traditionally is customer relationship management, right? That's what it's for. It's generally used for sales or operations, but definitely sales. Helps track prospects, new prospective customers, the conversations you have with them, communications tasks, so on. And then hopefully through a process until you ultimately end up converting those prospects to customers. Recruiting is the same. Recruiting is sales. It's the same thing. It's such a parallel. So having that same type of functionality makes sense, except instead of calling it customer relationship management, we call it candidate relationship management. But there's so much that you can do, just like you probably do from a sales standpoint. You probably have this database of prospects and customers, and you probably communicate with them on some regular basis. Maybe it's monthly newsletters or certain, like, hey, we've got this new thing coming up. You probably saw some of that from that database for this event, right? You got communications about this event because your information was in a system, somebody's CRM. And so from that perspective, it's a parallel to recruiting. There's a lot of opportunities. It's really hard to hire drivers. There's a lot of opportunities to leverage CRM functionality so that, we're talking single digits percentage is the number of drivers that you end up hiring in turn. Out of 100, you might hire 2. That's just how it is. But there's 98 others that they're not chopped liver, right? They still are prospective drivers, and engaging with them, leveraging CRM functionality is a great way to do that. Another thing too is recruiters, again, just like sales, you can't just be reactive. When I get a lead come in, I call. When I get a phone call, I answer. You've got to be proactive. And another way to do that, as you're, marketing and you're advertising and you're getting applicants that, fill out an application, et cetera, you want to engage with them. You want to communicate with them. But as that database continues to build and you are sending out, emails and text blasts and stuff like that with some sort of cadence, generally promoting things that matter to them, not promoting you necessarily, giving them updates on things that might be relevant to them. So are considered a thought leader, and you stay top of mind to them. But the advantage that you have with this is if you've got 1,000 drivers in a database, then you send out this, okay, we need to fill a couple, 2 or 3 trucks. You send that out, and now you look at the engagement rate. First of all, are any of them bouncing? Are any of them opening that email that I sent? Are any of them clicking on anything? Because from a follow-up standpoint, if they don't respond, that's at least a good gauge or a good way to prioritize who I'm going to reach out to proactively with those outbound calls. And again, CRM functionality allows you to create follow-up tasks. And, if I talk to a driver and I know that, they have this ticket, this citation that's going to come off in 3 months or 6 months or however down the road, but everything else being equal, we really think this is a good fit for us. I can create a task to make sure that I circle back at the appropriate time. So, and the other thing is, and we don't have any marketing or advertising companies in the room, I don't think. Well, anybody who is, you can close your ears, because one of the things that CRM functionality enables you to do is reduce your advertising spend, because you keep spending that money all the time, and they want you to spend money, and for good reason. They want you to get more leads and so on, but you have a bunch. And it's important not to waste those. And it's important to continue to engage and communicate with your growing database of driver applicants, and leveraging CRM functionality to do that. So from an applicant tracking system, that's the other sort of, simple recruiting technology. This is all not new. Trucking is just overall is a little deficient when it comes to HR and recruiting technology versus other more innovative and progressive industries. And so having the concept of an applicant tracking system is sound, right? When a driver fills out that application of employment, you want that to feed into a system, not into your email inbox. That is really difficult to manage, and it's a lot of wasted time. And so instead, having that feed directly into a platform that you can now manage the entire, qualification process, because, like, as I said, it's complex. There's a lot of reports that you've got to run. There's integrations that exist that make it really easy, and you can, whittle that time to hire down significantly, with a few days versus, in some cases, a week or more. And the other thing, the advantage that you have is you can track, as I said earlier, all the advertising spend and et cetera that you're doing. You can see where these leads are coming from, how much, what you're spending for those. So you can, run reports to see what is working and what isn't, and then make, better decisions accordingly. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So, and I think what's really key, and that was Kelly, right? We were talking earlier today just about the importance of, especially in this age of nuclear verdicts and settlements, how important it is to ensure that your driver qualification files are pristine. No one's are, but that's not the reason why you shouldn't. It's so important, and it's so easy when you're leveraging technology to help you manage that. It's so easy to stay on top of it. It's not It's not so complex, but it's really critical to be able to leverage that functionality. This is not even so much on the recruiting side as much as it's just managing and mitigating risk from a compliance standpoint. And so at the end of the day, as you can see up on the screen, 1 + 1 = 3 in this case. I think it's important, when drivers apply for a job, they generally apply to 2, 3, 4 companies at a time. And leveraging modern technology is the difference with that, between that driver working for you or working for somebody else. So that is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm sorry that I'm not able to stick around through the Q&A time here, but I've shared with Mike that if there are any questions, I'm happy to ask them either via email or afterwards. But thank you so much for doing this, and Mike, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, Jeremy's not gonna be able to stick around, but if you have questions for him, you can still write them down and you can still win prizes, and you just won't get your question answered by him immediately. But the rest of us can guess at it, and then you can find out how wrong we are when he gives you the right answer. We're gonna take a quick break, 15 minutes or so, and then we'll get back and we'll have 2 more sessions. Oh, for the people online, if you can't figure out how to do the question part through the platform that we're using, you can just email marketing@truckingpayroll.com with your question, and we'll get you set up that way. Thanks.